Hello, and welcome to Tough Talk with me, Emerald. All right, so today is Friday, December 23rd, which means we have about 8 days until 2017. So I have decided to do a year in review for 2016, and I have entitled this year in review, Thanks for Nothing 2016, because you ain't about shit. So tonight I'm going to go over a couple of the big things that happened, a couple of the marquee items, give a couple less opinions on those things, and then get us ready for what we need to do next year. As always, I am sipping on something. Tonight, I am drinking bourbon and cheer wine, and it is quite delicioso, as my friend would say. And as I'm sure you can see, I am not in my original bathtub. I am actually away for a holiday break in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, visiting some friends, and so we are doing an away show tonight. But they have agreed to let me film there in their bathroom, in their bathtub, and put it on the internet. So, thanks, guys. Okay, so the show's gonna be a little bit different and maybe a little bit longer, but there are a lot of things I want to go over. So first, I'm going to start off, instead of pouring the tea, the lemonade, and other beverages like I usually do, kind of sipping tea on people, actually I'm going to pour a little out for the homies. We lost a lot of really influential, great people this year, and I just wanted to recognize them. So first of all, our musicians, we lost David Bowie, we lost the purple one, Prince, Leonard Cohen, who was a composer, just some really wonderful people we lost this year, and it was really devastating. Like, the legends are really leaving this earth, and that's really hard. Muhammad Ali left us this summer, Gene Wilder, Gwen Ifill recently passed away. For those of you who don't know, black woman who was a journalist, worked with PBS for many, many years, moderated many presidential conversations, debates, town halls. Alan Rickman, Snape, from the Harry Potter series, he left us. I'm actually wearing the pendant of Salazar Slytherin, who it was a Horcrux in the Deathly Hallows, for those of you who are a Harry Potter nerd like me. So Alan Rickman passed away. One of the, I guess, a silver lining for losing a lot of these legends is that there's a void that has to be filled, and we have so much talent out there. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of our musical talent that we're seeing come up in the world. But just, it leaves the door open for a new generation to come in and really stake their claim. And that doesn't mean that we're forgetting those who've come before us. It doesn't mean that we're forgetting our icons and our legends and our muses, man. Right? Like Prince was a muse to me, right? To how to live and how to be as a person. David Bowie was a muse to me. It doesn't mean that we're forgetting them. It just means that there is a void to be filled, and that could bring about some really great talent from a different generation. So I look forward to see what happens in 2017 when it comes to filling some of those voids that we've lost. And I'll take a sip to that. Okay, so politics. It was a really big year in politics. Obviously, there was a presidential election, and I don't think I need to go over kind of what happened there. I think we're all pretty familiar about that. We're all pretty familiar about the fallout from that. We're all pretty familiar about the circus that was the entire election season and campaigning season. And I think many of us are justifiably pretty anxious about what awaits us on the other side of the new year. But there are a couple of things that maybe you all forgot about that I just wanted to mention. First of all, outside of the newest president-elect, one of the biggest upsets of this presidential election season was the disenfranchisement of Bernie's supporters, in particular in the primary season. So Bernie Sanders had a multitude of people following him, supporting him, who were really getting behind his message of real progressivism, liberalism, and I was one of them. I have made that very clear numerous times on the show, and throughout the entire season, throughout the entire primary season, even afterwards, the Democratic National Convention just really showed those supporters that either we needed to fall in line and get behind their candidate and shut up, or not, like that. Like, that's what we had to do. And while there are a myriad of things that contributed to Hillary Clinton losing the election, I think one of the things that is not being acknowledged by the DNC, by the Clintons, even by the Obamas, is that the Democratic Party isolated so much of its own base by not listening to the concerns and the wants and the push forward that its constituents had, and particularly when it came to Senator Sanders and his run for the presidency. The email leaks, talking about, just the anti-Semitism in it, and talking about, how to deal with the Black Lives Matter movement, which was contrary to like how Senator Sanders had dealt with the Black Lives Matter movement on his campaign trail. Just all of these things happened, and it's not being acknowledged that there are millions of Americans who don't trust the Democratic Party right now, who didn't and still don't trust Secretary Clinton because of those things, and I don't think that is being acknowledged, and the party is not looking to unite that faction back whole with it, and it's really frustrating. So, that happened. I'm not going to forget it because I'm still pissed off. Like, I'm still fucking pissed. I'm pissed about the fact that we're supposed to be a party of liberalism and progressive thought, and we're not moving that way, right? Like, we have become stagnant in how we're thinking. We are mirroring the conservative party, the Republican Party, excuse me, those who are more conservative, and that's just not who we are. And if we're going to be progressive and think progressive, and that's what we need to do, and stop kind of putting out this neoliberalism that isn't really about moving the needle forward. Yeah, so that happened this year, and it was really disheartening, and like I said, it contributed to the election of Donald Trump. So, own up to your bullshit, DNC. I talked a little bit before about the Brexit happening, and about the UK deciding that they wanted to separate from the EU, which is the European Union. A lot of that was based off of xenophobia, hatred of the unknown, essentially the unknown people. And I talked about how people are going to say it's about economics, and it's about safety, it's about all these things, but really it's about not wanting migrants and immigrants coming into their country and stealing their jobs and taking over their health care and blah, 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 and all the shit that small-minded, bigoted people say. And then, because of that, as a result of that, David Cameron actually resigning early and stepping down as a prime minister. So, a lot of really weird unrest happening politically in the world, right? Just here recently, the Russian ambassador to Turkey was assassinated in, like, a photo gallery. Like, do y'all remember how World War I started? Because I do. Archduke Ferdinand of Austria was assassinated. And I just keep thinking to myself, like, this sounds oddly familiar to me. And, again, just, what the fuck are we going to do? Russia's out of control. Like, Putin is out of control. And it's so funny to me. I saw a meme the other day that was talking about, it was like from Latin American countries, like, oh, America, you're mad that a foreign leader a foreign country put a puppet leader in charge of your country. Like, essentially, did Putin have Trump elected so that, he could have a bigger ally in America and continue to run amok as he's doing in fucking Syria? We're seeing that, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. But, like, continuously terrorizing smaller parts of the world. Millions of people are dying, being bombed, like, being exposed to chemical warfare. Children, like, we'll talk about that later. I'm sure you all have seen the pictures, but it's devastating. And somebody decided to take action on that in Turkey and kill the ambassador, and now I'm like, well, fuck. What does that mean? Like, what does that actually mean for politics in the world and for how we move forward? Like, what does that mean for treaties and peace accords? I don't know if we still do that shit anymore. Like, I feel like that's old. Like, what the fuck is the Geneva Convention? But anyway, like, but what does that mean for us moving forward? So, that happened. Let's see. I actually took notes today because there's a lot that I wanted to go over. Let's see. What's next? So there's a lot that happened this year regarding different social justice issues, and it's going to be really hard for me to kind of go over all of them, but I'm going to try my damnedest, so bear with me. Here's the good news. The good news is there are about 14 episodes before this one where I talk about the majority of these in a little bit more detail and length. So if you want to know, my opinions a little bit more, check out the archives. Shoot me an email. We can talk about it. But let's get into it, right? First of all, most recently, Standing Rock. We all know what was going on out there. The Dakota Access Pipeline, where sacred ground of the Standing Rock Reservation was going to be disrupted. The tribe that was there was unsure that their water would be safe if there was a pipeline put under their water reservoir and source. And so for about 3.5, 4 months, there was a standoff with the sheriff's department, with law enforcement there. It got really ugly. There were water cannons used. There were scare tactics used to get the water protectors to leave so that the Army Corps of Engineers could continue to build this pipeline. Finally, and this happened only about 2 or 3 weeks ago, this is very recent, that the Army Corps of Engineers said that they would not move forward with the route as it was planned out. And so everybody rejoiced in that celebration, which is great. But like, we don't fucking know what's going to happen, because from what I've been reading, a lot of the backers, the financial backers, are saying that no, they do plan on moving forward. They're waiting for the newest administration to get into office and try to make moves that way. And with, Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State, who is an oil tycoon, like, who the fuck knows what's going to happen at this point? But so that happened. What it showed was that if we stand together, even if it does take 3.5, 4 months, fucking 4 years, we can get some stuff done. Like, the protesting, the marching, the disruption does work. And it can work. We just have to make sure that we do it in a united way and in a united front. Something else that happened earlier this year, the Black Lives Matter put out its manifest. And if you all didn't read that, I think you should. It put out a couple of points about what it wants to see happen in our country regarding the movement liberation for Black lives. It was beautifully written. I suggest that you look it up. And kind of going along with that, they're dealing with a lot of the kind of racist things that were going on against Black people, marginalized peoples of colors. There are lots of uprisings that happen across the country, usually in response to violence, majority from law enforcement. So we had uprisings in Milwaukee, in Charlotte, in Baton Rouge, in Minneapolis, in Tulsa, in Baltimore after Corinne Gaines. And something that I just want to ask really quickly, I was talking about this with my friends. We talked about, like, what do we call these? We're calling it the Milwaukee riots, we're calling it the Milwaukee uprising, we're calling it the Charlotte uprising. Like, what do we call it? And we all settled on uprising because that made the most sense to us. But, like, I asked, like, well, what is a riot? Like, can we take a look at what it actually means to riot? And the definition, actually, very short, Merriam-Webster, one of the definitions for a riot has something to do with actually disturbing the peace. So, like, a violent act or action of a crowd, something, yada, yada, that disturbs the peace of society or something like that, right? Like, this is me paraphrasing very loosely right now. But I was thinking about the idea of disturbing the peace, which was the most important part to me. And the fact that, well, then it can't be rioting because we're not disturbing the peace. The peace was disturbed by whatever act we are reacting to, whether that was an unarmed person of color being shot, whether that was a bigoted, xenophobic, racist, sexist person being elected to the presidency. The peace was disturbed already. So I started thinking about that term, and I really want to, like, kind of change the narrative about what that means. Like, let's look at the definition about that. And when the peace is already disturbed and we're reacting to it, we're not fucking rioting, man. You know what we're doing? We are standing up for justice and liberation at that point. And I'm cool with that. I was always cool with that, even if it was fucking rioting. But I'm really cool with it now. Social justice, let's see. There were so many different attacks on women's rights this year. First thing that comes to mind, unfortunately, is the fucking asshole out of Stanford, fucking Brock Turner. The rape case about, the girl who 2 guys walked up on him on top of a girl behind a dumpster. He was a swimmer, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. I don't give a fuck about him. Anyway, wasn't convicted of raping this girl. That's a mess. The idea that, like, there are still so many laws and bills being passed that are limiting women to health care access, and particularly when it comes to the choice on whether or not they want to carry a child. The fact that it's recently been decided that, where is it, in Texas, that you have to bury a fetus if it has been aborted. The lack of access to health care for transgender women in particular, and also the fact that transgender women are being murdered at super high rates. We're being murdered at super high rates this year, and nobody's doing a goddamn thing about it. And then there's a little bit of that. I want to talk a little bit about the idea of intersectionality too, right? Like, I talked about this a lot when I mentioned Nate Parker, and this idea that, like, there's this bit of, like, me being a woman, but there's this bit of me being a black woman, and how, like, sometimes I find it hard to, like, really stand for being a woman because even women don't appreciate the fact that I'm black. But then it's really hard for me to stand for being black because even black men don't appreciate how hard it is for me to be a woman. And just keeping, like, these are things that we're consistently battling with. In 2016, I feel like brought a lot of this shit to the forefront, right? Like, a lot of us were asked to choose. I was asked to choose. Are you black or are you a woman? I'm like, well, goddamn, like, I'm both. Like, I'm both of those things fully. And I need you to recognize that about me, you know? Like, okay, so something that I want to touch on real quick, because I really don't have a lot of time, and I'm trying to, I got a lot of stuff to give y'all. I was thinking about the idea of terrorism, right? Like, this year we saw a lot of terrorist acts. Like, we saw a lot of stuff happen in France and Paris. We recently saw something happen in Berlin. Pulse nightclub here. There's a San Bernardino shooting out in California. I mean, like, just terrorist acts across the globe. Right? And so I looked up the definition of terrorism, and I'm going to read it to you, then I'm going to give you my top 5 acts of terrorism this year, okay? So, terrorism is the systematic use of terror, especially as a means of coercion, okay? And just because I'm this person, the definition of terror is a state of fear or a cause of anxiety. So terrorism, then let's put it all together. Terrorism is a systematic use of the state of fear or cause of anxiety, especially as a means of coercion. So, my top 5 terrorism acts this year are the election of Donald Trump and Mike Pence and how they went about their campaign. That was terrorism on many groups that are marginalized, including women, including minorities, including Muslims, including, you know, other people who were non-Christians, including immigrants, just anybody who wasn't a white male Christian faced the terrorism of Trump, Pence, and all of their cronies who got them elected. This year, again, dealing with the election, I felt terrorized by the evangelical church. Not just disappointed, not just really sad and hurt, but actually felt terrorized. Like, the use of fear and anxiety telling me that God was looking at me a certain way because I felt like my rights as a human weren't being considered when it came to this election. Like, that's what that was. So, evangelicals on my terrorism watch list for 2016. U.S. law enforcement. I don't even know if I need to mention why. I mean, I can give you a couple names. Keith Lamont Scott out of Charlotte being shot by law enforcement. Walter Scott, whose murderer was just set free, who was a police officer out of North Charleston, South Carolina. Corinne Gaines in Baltimore, who was shot while holding her 4-year-old son in her home by law enforcement. Justin Carr, who was a protester, who was a freedom fighter, maybe 5 feet away from me in Charlotte, was shot by riot police. That's fucking terror. When I was driving to Milwaukee, my biggest fear was not running out of gas. My biggest fear was not getting lost. My biggest fear wasn't hitting bad weather. My biggest fear was that I would have to have some type of engagement with law enforcement. I was scared to come on my trip to visit my friends, to live my life in the happy-go-lucky way, to celebrate and to be joyful and to laugh, because I was nervous at the idea that I might have to have face-to-face conversation with law enforcement, and I did not know that I would make it out of that alive, or that my husband would make it out of that alive. That is terror. That is how so many people live their lives every day when it comes to U.S. law enforcement. So you're on my terrorist watch list for 2016. Russia, and particularly when it comes to Syria, and now when it comes to the U.S., now that we know that you're hacking our shit, you're on the terrorist watch list for the upcoming year, for this past year and for the upcoming year. And then something that me and my husband have been talking about a lot more recently, the Israeli state, in particular when it comes to Palestine. If you don't know what's going on there, I suggest you Google it. But I'm sure many of you know that the U.S. gives a lot of money, a lot of support to Netanyahu and the Israeli state. And I'm just not with it. I'm not for how they're treating the brown people in Palestine. And the Israeli state is on my terrorist watch list. So, talk about terrorism. Yeah, we could talk about ISIS. We could talk about all those other things. But let's talk about what's terrorizing people that you may not feel because of how you live and where you live. But like is a very real reality for so many of us right now. So, that's my social justice piece. It was a lot. I told y'all. Yeah, let me take a sip. Let me take another one. Okay. Pop culture. I know y'all been waiting for this one. So there are a lot of really great things that happened in pop culture this year. I'm going to just go through a couple of them that stood out to me, and then I'm going to wrap this bad boy up. So, first of all, we all remember Oscars So White earlier this year. Looks like we're going to see the same shit next year. I don't have anything for Hollywood right now. If you don't see how you're missing out on actors of color, I'm just talking about black people. People always think I'm just talking about black people, but I'm not. If you don't see you're missing out on actors of color, if you don't see how you are passing up people of color for roles that were meant for them, look at Ghost in the Shell, that cast an Asian character, or excuse me, that cast Scarlett Johansson as an Asian character. Look at Doctor Strange, that cast Tilda Swinton as somebody who was meant to be a Tibetan woman. Like, I'm so over it. And it happened this year, and so we'll see what the fuck 2017 has to offer. I don't know if y'all remember over the summer, Jesse Williams in the BET Awards, he gave a bomb-ass speech when basically he talked about how everybody was biting black people's culture, and we have to stand up for ourselves. And if you want to be a part of this liberation movement, great. Otherwise, get out the way and sit down. Like, you don't get to come and critique it. You can come help. Otherwise, let me do my damn job. I'm not going to be mad at you if you get out the way. Just get out the damn way. I'm going to be mad at you if you stand in my way, right? So, remember in that speech, go look that up again. I look it up every now and again when I need some inspiration. We also saw, y'all, one of my favorite things happened. Y'all already know, because I'm petty as shit. Fucking Kim Kardashian pulling out the receipts on Taylor Swift, who tried her damnedest to continue to be this sweet, innocent little girl. And Kim was like, nah, bitch, you ain't about to clown my husband in public. So that's a highlight for me. That brought me a little bit of joy because, like I said, I'm petty. Kate McKinnon from Saturday Night Live being the first out female to win an Emmy. She won Best Supporting Actress on SNL. So that's a really big win for the LGBTQIA community. And, you know, I do like to celebrate the wins. And then the Olympics. So a couple things happened at the Olympics this year, right? First of all, you had Ryan Lochte and his white male privilege bullshit making up a story about being robbed at gunpoint, yada, yada. It all comes out to be false. And just the whole debacle and fiasco that happened there, which actually took away from what's really important, which was how women were slaying it at the Olympics. Now, let me give my props to Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps is Michael Phelps, and he is fucking one of the greatest. He's the GOAT of all time when it comes, like, he's the GOAT when it comes to swimming, right? But Simone Biles in gymnastics, Simone Manuel when it comes to swimming, and these are black women, right? Venus and Serena both in tennis, right? And so many other women just kicking ass at the Olympics this year. Again, I encourage all of y'all to go look up what happened at the Olympics, because I feel like so much of it was overshadowed by not just Ryan Lochte, but also by them being compared to their male counterparts. And I'm just not here for that, because women, we be doing our shit on our own and we be killing it. And then in music, we had a lot of really great albums come out this year. A lot of it came out of the pain, the frustration of what we're seeing when it comes to some of the social justice issues going on. So we had like J. Cole just come out, Childish Gambino, which is my shit right now. Kendrick Lamar came out. We finally heard from Frank Ocean after, 45 years waiting for his ass. Rihanna pulled out Auntie earlier this year, and that was bomb. Tribe Called Quest came out with a new album, which is what we need right now, a real revolution album. And then Beyonce came out with Lemonade. White America finally found out that Beyonce was black. But she was outdone by her little sister Solange, because A Seat at the Table is the album that we needed. It is the self-care album for Black America, and particularly for Black women. If you have not listened to A Seat at the Table by Solange Knowles Ferguson, please go listen to it. It is fantastic. So we did have some really great things come out of this year, and I wanted to make sure that I talked about some of the good, because it's been a lot of bad. All right, y'all. It's been about 26 minutes, so I'm about to wrap this shit up. So I would love for you, as we are about to end, to write a comment at the bottom of the video. You know how YouTube works. What's your top story from this year? Let me know. I'd love to hear. Maybe I'll talk about it again as we move into 2017. I just want to leave y'all with something. My final thought is, we're moving forward. We have 8 days until this new year rings in, and there's a lot of fucking work to be done, and you all know it. I was telling my friends, I don't need allies in this work. I think a lot of you know that I'm out here literally in these streets, figuratively in these streets, right? And I don't need allies. I don't need somebody who is cheering me on from the sidelines. I need accomplices in this work. I need somebody who is walking and running and working and fighting and digging and clawing and bleeding and crying right alongside with me. So if you want to be an ally, you can stay your ass where you at. If you want to be an accomplice and you want to work with me, then I welcome you, and I challenge you to think about what that means. There's a quote that gets tossed around a lot, and I'm going to use it here because I like to end on a quote. But it says, if you've come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is tied up with mine, then let's work together. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody who is willing to work together. A lot of us are. And there are a lot of people doing this work. So you can be an ally and pat yourself on the back somewhere else. But if you are ready to do this work together, then let's do it. Because there is so much shit to be done. We have got to liberate all of us, y'all. We got to get free. And we will get free. I don't care who is in the presidency. I don't care what Congress says. I don't care what the Senate votes. I don't care who gets set on that 9th seat in the Supreme Court. I don't care what country leaves the EU. I don't care. We will get ourselves free if we work together. Okay. So, remember, comment below what your favorite or most memorable event of 2016 is. Just one last time, because 2016 really ain't shit. I'm just going to give it a big fuck you. I'm glad for you to be over. I'm glad to get this shit going in 2017. I love y'all. Thanks for staying with me this year. And I cannot wait to do awesome things in 2017. So,